and welcome to a Game of Thrones, Season 3, Episode 10 review. Bring my hand in. That's 10. Alright, this is a review for Mhysa, which is the Giscari word for mother, as we find out towards the end of this episode. Which is a very good, if I could play music on my channel without getting in trouble for it, a Danzig track of him screaming Mhysa would be absolutely perfect for this, but hey, just let your imaginations run wild. So, we officially have a little over half of this book eating up Season 3, and we're expecting probably a good majority of the rest of it, and maybe a little bit of Feast for Crows eating up Season 4. Now, this episode in particular is, as the usual flair with the Game of Thrones seasons, a lot of setup, but it also gives us the opportunity to kind of breathe a little bit, and I think that this final episode of this season has done more successfully than the past two season finales that we had with the past seasons. Mostly because with Natanya Barron, who does these after-episode tea party thoughts with a couple of other friends of hers who are also book readers, kind of brought up this point that there was a collective brain aneurysm by a lot of people last week. Even book readers and non-book readers alike who watched the show were outraged over the way that this went down. And certainly two of the non-book readers who watched the show that I'm aware of have mentioned the fact that they're going to drop it. Oh, I almost forgot. Kyle, here are the glasses off for you, buddy. But with this last episode, we need breathing room. And we also need to see how the characters react once they get the news of what's transpired from the previous episode. And that's kind of what the point of this episode is. And in some ways, it also plays a little bit on the Mhysa word, because there's going to be things that come into play with Cersei in this episode. And it might have been a little bit foreshadowed by the end of the Red Wedding episode as well. So let's get down into it. Let's talk about Tyrion first off, because he does eat up a majority of this episode. Now, Tyrion at this point is called into a small council chamber meeting with his father, with various the old fuck whose name I can't remember, and Cersei being present, and he finds his nephew in there who gleefully informs him that Robb Stark and Catelyn Stark have been taken out by the Freys. He's absolutely devastated by this news, especially about how he's going to have to break it to his new wife now. And Joffrey is continuing to be out of control with this. In fact, the crown is going to his head, or more of the throne, I should say, at this point. He's clearly letting the power go to his head, and there's kind of the analogy that if you spend too much time on the throne, you're going to get hemorrhoids, and apparently this kid has been sitting on the throne and had the crown on his head for too long because he's got fucking brain hemorrhoids. The power has gone to his head, and he's going absolutely crazy. And he is shooting down anyone who pretty much refutes him. Especially when he goes and talks about wanting to parade Robb Stark's head at his own wedding for Sansa. There's more tension which is dropped when Tyrion actually says that he will do no such damn thing. And Joffrey is losing it with him. This is kind of getting into strike 2 now, and with the Tyrion and Joffrey rivalry, which is building up right now. But Tywin is there, and Tywin is in control of this. Now, he's got a lot of faults under his belt, to be sure, but he is probably one of the most level-headed motherfuckers in this show that I've seen outside of the Queen of Thorns. He's the only one who's really put down and shown that he is not afraid of Joffrey Baratheon. There's even a point where he actually goes and, the kid's getting up in his grandfather's face, and Tywin actually says, you know what, take the king to his room, he's tired, give him a little nightcap and let him get some sleep. And even though the kid's, being all brash, I got to give his grandfather at least this. He is the one in control of this, and he kind of furthermore tantamounts to that statement when he tells Tyrion that he's a fool if he thinks that the king is the one who wields the power in the kingdom. Kind of in a crazy way, Tywin is sort of a Norman Rockwell a little bit, maybe a Rockefeller a little bit. He's definitely got the money in the kingdom, and he's the one wielding the power. And there seems to be kind of this social commentary going, not just with this, but a lot of things. Apparently, a lot of people will notice, but if this gets mentioned or not, hey, that the people behind the power are the ones who actually wield it. More of the whole the men behind the curtain and the people behind the scenes scenario, which is playing out in this. And he pretty much shows that he does have power over his grandson. And this furthermore laments a little bit more into the horrible relationship in between Tywin and Tyrion, when he says that he, once again, cannot stand his son, but for the fact that he is a Lannister, he is out strictly to protect the family name. But he's so busy protecting the family name as a father that he's not being a father to his own children, especially when they call for him. So it's kind of a very sad but fucked up scenario at the same time. And we leave with Tyrion going off to break the news to Sansa, and in fact he gets there and comes to find out that Sansa is in fact already been informed of it. I have no doubt that Joffrey is the son of a bitch who told him, or told her, the news that transpired. I'm a little bit heartbroken for her in these scenes. She is treated as a little bit of a dimwit in the books, for me and a lot of people when you get into reading her. But at least with this show, I'm conveyed to have a little bit more of a sense of sympathy for this girl. And there's kind of a point, too, before a lot of this transpired, that her and Tyrion were actually kind of starting to get along with each other. Which is something. But we kind of pretty much do away with this scenario, and that's kind of the end of it for them with this episode. Then we kind of move on to a scene in between Shay and Varys, actually. Now, Varys seems probably to genuinely care more about the realm than he does Tyrion, but he goes to actually implore, what's her name? Wow, I feel bad. He actually goes and implores Shay to leave. He gives her a satchel full of diamonds and says, take a ship, go off somewhere, live a new life. I do believe that you and Tyrion are genuinely in love, but you're a danger to him because he seems to be the only Lannister that gives a fuck about the kingdom, and he's got the wit enough about him to fix it. And she just absolutely says, no, I'm not going to. This is my man, and I'm going to stick with him. And despite my feelings for what Shay is in the books, in this particular instance, I got to give her props. She's not happy about the arranged marriage, but at the same time, she's, to use an old school analogy, sort of a ride or die chick a little bit. She's going to stick by her man. And I kind of got to give her respect for that. So that's nice. Now, we move on to Sam and Gilly. And while I mention them, they're coming along a little bit. They're moving somewhere back towards Castle Black. And in fact, this is going to be a rendezvous point in between her group and Bran Stark's group as well. There's a point where they meet up with each other. And it's only enough, and it's only a little bit in passing, that they actually get to have Sam give them directions somewhere, and then Bran and his group proceed on through the wall, and Sam and Gilly make their way back to Castle Black, and Sam introduces Gilly and her baby to Master Aemon, and that's pretty much what the scene amounts to. Now, episodically, I have been very disappointed with the way that Sam has been handled in this season, especially considering that there's so much good stuff in here that they could have used for him. Considering the pacing times and all that, I was very underwhelmed by the scene where he actually does kill the White Walker from last episode. It's kind of a point in the show now where we're actually trying to make him important. And it was just kind of, we got to do this. And, actually, they were eating scenes up with bullshit of him through this past season. And they finally get to this. It's like, oh yeah, he has something important to do. Bam, he killed a White Walker. That's the most important thing he does in this book to them. And that's it. Hopefully he will get a little bit more screen time because he does come to be a much more central character. He is in Book 3, but he will become a much more central character at least once Book 4 makes it onto the show. So there is this to look forward to. As far as Bran Stark's group is concerned, again, really not much to say about them. Really, the only thing I could take away from it, besides the interesting fact that Sam finds out that Bran is Jon's brother, is, it's kind of a little bit of a heartwarming scene, a little bit to watch Hodor stick his face down the well and go, Hodor, and enjoy hearing his name in the echo. And that's about it. Now, we move back on to, God, I don't want to talk about this, but Theon. Thankfully, Theon is not tortured as severely in this episode as he has been this past season. He has been, outside of the Red Wedding and a lot of the sex scenes, probably the biggest selling point of shock value this season. And we're kind of left wondering at first whether or not Ramsay Snow is actually eating something that came out of that sausage that he was forking in this particular episode. And the analogies that they just built up with it, very heavy-handed, very just want to come up and just thwack you on your fucking nose, and I hated that. I think really the only thing that it establishes is that it's eating up time with this character, and because he's still under contract, they got to do something with him. So all this scene really does is just establish that Ramsay Snow is just a little son of a bitch who is torturing him, and he kind of beats the crap out of Theon a little bit more until he decides to dub Theon Greyjoy Reek, and Reek finally accepts his new name. Now we flash forward to the scene with the Greyjoys. Again, this is kind of a disappointing scene in a sense. Now the only thing that really redeems this scene in any way is Elijah, I think her name is in the show, Elijah Greyjoy's, when they get the letter and the dick in the box, which I could cue a Justin Timberlake song on this point. That's pretty much what the scene 10 amounts to, is that Balon Greyjoy is there and he gets the letter about his son being held hostage, and I do agree with him on this much. The boy was a fool, but he is still your son, and that seems to be the theme for the closing of this episode, is a lot of family ties here. It may not necessarily be in the sense of the mother, but there's also a little bit of a father-son thing going on in here too, especially with the way that Tyrion and Tywin had it, and then examining really the sad relationship in between Balon and Theon, who pretty much at this point, in a very cold-hearted manner, I have no son anymore. He's not a man. Elijah, I love her a little bit more in this than I do in the books. She actually does have a heart to go out and want to rescue her brother, and that's kind of what tantamounts to with this episode. That's going to be the setup for next season, is her going after her brother with a lot of the Iron Fleet. Which I'm surprised they didn't actually throw the Prophet in here too, as probably another character we'll be introduced to in Season 4, who is a little bit more important in those books, or in that particular book. Which, actually, no, I take that back. He isn't in this book, so, yeah, never mind that. But, yeah, the Theon scenes really this season, and I'm going to look back on it and say it, have really just been absolutely terrible to watch. As I feel like that, at least for the Theon scenes in this, we're getting the medieval version of Hostile going on, and while there was one twist where they thought, or where he thought that he was being led away from the pike, and actually come to find out that he was in fact being led back to where he was originally imprisoned by Ramsay Snow, was a good twist. Everything else that followed for him this season has just been gut-wrenching to watch. This is probably the closest that I have seen. Well, this is pretty much Hostile in this thing. I'm only surprised they didn't feed his jewels to a dog. But everything with Theon in this episode has been absolutely horrendous to watch, and I really feel for the character. I mean, like, yeah, granted, what he did to Winterfell is bad enough, but it's the fact that he's broken about it too. And he's just been put through a lot of shit, and I really am past, enjoying myself watching him get tortured like that. So I'm moving on from that. Now, the Cersei and Jaime Lannister reunion is a short-lived one. Basically, it amounts to him and Brienne coming back into King's Landing, and they have Qyburn along, which is okay. It's passable. It's not really that important to talk about. Then we get to, let's see, the Night's Watch with, before we get back to the wall with the Jon and Ygritte scene I have to talk about. A little disappointing in this episode. Again, there's a lot of things from it I'm going to say. But really, after the way things went down, this scene really is not worth talking about. She is angry at him for abandoning her, but she just can't bring herself to kill him because she still has a thing for him in her heart. And Jon makes it back to Castle Black, and that's pretty much the end of it for him. Jon Snow's episode points for the season really have not been some of the best for me. It's not really until a little too late in the season that we start actually getting interested in a lot of the stuff with him. And there are some cool scenes that do take place, but admittedly, a lot of Jon Snow in this has been disappointing to me. Especially in this book. He is one of my favorite characters. And the guy for him is a little bit miscast, and just a lot of decisions that they've made about the way that they handled Jon in this show have been absolutely just disappointing to me. I'm probably going to go on record as saying right now that Jon is my least favorite character from the show. I fucking love him in the books, but I hate the way that they are doing him in the show. Then we get to Stannis Baratheon and Davos and Melisandre and all the stuff that's still going on there. Gendry is being kept in the dungeons. We were doing a little barbecuing of leeches from the bloodletting seduction that happened back in the Second Sons episode. And now they're getting ready. Melisandre just says, "My king, you just need to barbecue him, and that will lead to a further victory for you." And Davos is, fucking Jiminy Cricket. He's hanging on there, and there's kind of this interesting shot where he's standing in front of his conscience and the little red woman on his shoulder telling him what to do. And, Davos just realizes, again, this is the thing about honor. He can't be a party to a disgrace or disgrace himself, and he'd rather take the high road out. So he winds up spiriting Gendry away and gets him out of there, but not before he read an interesting note. And I think that they're playing Davos off a little bit smart in this too. I think that he knew that he would get in trouble for it with his king. And I think more than anything that when he found out, when he actually got the note from the north about the White Walkers which are approaching, that he was using it as a trump card. And it was a really smart play on them for it. And it seems to have kind of awakened a little bit of, it's not just that, but the fact that it actually wound up being a little bit of his own salvation once Melisandre took it and looked at it and said, yeah, he does have a part to play in us taking care of the White Walkers. So, pretty much ends, Davos is not entirely swung onto, following the Red God, but for now his bacon is saved, so to speak. And Davos seems to have put his king onto a new path now. What Stannis' decisions will be at this point, I will not say. We'll just have to find out next season. Now, we'll tail end this episode with Daenerys. Now, Daenerys' ending for this particular episode didn't go out with quite the bang that I wanted, but it was certainly a lot better than the season finale that they gave with her from season 2. Basically, Yunkai doesn't want war. After the little infiltration mission that Grey Worm, Jorah, and Darius did in taking out a lot of the guards, Yunkai doesn't want a battle. It is facing 8,000 solid on the outside, plus 3 dragons. We don't need a big barbecue in the desert going on, so they just finally free the slaves, and it basically tantamounts to them accepting the Mother of Dragons as their own Mhysa. And it's kind of recalling a little bit back to when the Unsullied were freed earlier this season, and kind of a remembering your chains episode and remembering the person that freed you moment. It was a nice way to cap out this the end of this episode, and it's building Daenerys up a little bit better than what she was done as in season 2. And while not the ending that I was hoping for, because I would like these final episodes of the season to go out with a bang, we did need some breathing room, and we certainly got a lot of nice setup going on here. And that's basically what this episode 10 amounts to. All in all, looking back on this episode and season 3 in general, Game of Thrones season 3 has been a stomp improvement considering what we got with the second season. It kind of dragged it a little bit in areas and took it a little bit to get going. In some areas it did not even take off, like with Jon Snow, or even kind of using characters that were important and waiting until the last minute to utilize them, like they do Samwell Tarly. But this show really got the ball rolling on a lot of things right, especially Tyrion, who managed to be Tyrion throughout the majority of the season. There were some major moments where you got invested with certain characters, and especially in the developments of the Red Wedding, or even for some of the plights that Sansa or even Daenerys went through in this episode. You got invested with them better, and they did a better job of handling most of their characters than they did last season. So, I don't know, if I got to look at it to give season 3 of Game of Thrones a score, let's say out of the 1 to 5 system, with 5 being the best and 1 being the worst, definitely going to give this season a 4 out of 5. Definitely hit a lot of right marks in the right areas. Unfortunately, could not utilize everything as well as it could, but with the expansion of characters coming in and a lot of the setup that they're doing, and especially considering the fact that they're basing 2 seasons off of this one book, some things I'll let slide on. So, final thoughts, season 3, definitely a 4 out of 5. This has been a much improved season, and I will definitely be looking forward to the next season to come, and I hope that a lot of the non-book readers who changed their minds, or at least who ran away from the show after the last episode, might want to come back and give this a chance again, because I think that things could have the distinct possibility of getting better from here on out. Plus, if a lot of y'all hate Joffrey, who knows? The Red God had called for the deaths of 3 kings. Robb Stark is out of the picture. Who knows? Maybe the little blonde-haired bastard will get his just desserts. And I would implore you to come back and try it again, but we'll just have to see. Until next time, I've enjoyed doing these Game of Thrones episode reviews for you, and I've enjoyed a lot of the feedback from people that I've gotten on them. And I hope to see you next year for more of these Game of Thrones episode reviews. So until then, I bid you all a very good weekend.